Hi friends, Boundless Divine here, artist, organizer, and spiritually based men's health advocate, and this is Divine Time. Alrighty, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, we're gonna get into the topic for today, which is relational, green flags, red flags, astrology, and accountability. And to put it really simply, we're just gonna call it relationships. Okay, so this isn't just about like romantic relationships, and for the process of this, for the purpose of this video, we're gonna talk about like friendship and word it friendship exclusively. But like, as we know that a lot of the great relationships, the best ones, they say you start out as friends first. And so the things that we talk about in terms of friendship, they can also apply to romantic relationships, even honestly business partnerships, and more. And in this video, we're going to be talking about exactly what the title says: green flags, red flags. We're going to talk about astrology and how that can influence friendship, accountability, and why that is super important in terms of like having friendships and relationships. And then of course, some journal prompts, and I actually have some book recommendations for this one. All right, let's get into it. Dr. Darius Daniels has this quote that he says all the time, and I think it perfectly sums up the why of this video. And that saying is, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. And that's huge. Like right now, we are in a 7-year 2023, reduces to 7. And 7 years about spirituality and perfection and just trying new things and going on adventures and finding more about who you are. But like, outside of that hermit energy, when we're, getting into the zone of like, purging and whatever, like eventually we need to be around people. Like we are most fulfilled when we're with others. And obviously we should come at it from a sense of self-awareness. But I think that a lot of times we can get so stuck on like, just like healing and protecting our energy or whatever, that we undermine the value and the importance of relationships for like our actual, emotional and physical and spiritual well-being. And so I think that's also because a lot of us have been hurt in relationships. And so I just wanted to take the time to kind of talk about some green flags in relationships and some red flags, so that way we can do, our purposeful work and in ways and communities that are good for us. All right. Okay. So I'm going to start with the green flags, and these green flags are non-negotiables. Like these are things that you need to have no matter what to have healthy relationships, in my opinion. And, we can agree to disagree, right? So number one green flag for relationships is boundaries. Like people who have boundaries are a great sign in relationships. They say, I forget who said it, but someone said that like boundaries aren't restrictive. Boundaries actually just allow me to love you, right? And so I'm sure that most of us, maybe all of us, have been in a situation with someone in which like you have a relationship and then you come to resent that person. And a lot of the times that resentment comes from the fact that there wasn't a boundary laid. Maybe someone was giving you too much of something or too little or whatever. But when you're really clear on like, hey, this is how I operate, this is what works for me, and this is what doesn't work for me, then you're able to have more like healthy relationships. And if right off rip, you're like, hey, like for me, example, like I tell people that I'm mostly available like after 5 p.m. Like don't, sometimes, I'll be available during the day to certain people, but for the most part, like I have my work going on, like, reach me at this time. But if someone's like, oh, that doesn't work for me, like I like to do whatever during the day, I'm like, that's fine. Right off rip, that's a way of disqualifying people. And like I think that we can go out of our way sometimes to accommodate people who like aren't supposed to be in our life, and we can try to force things. But it's like, if at the very minimum like your boundaries and someone else's preferences don't align, that's a really easy and simple way to disqualify people from your life. And it doesn't have to be hard feelings, right? And so the second non-negotiable, and those boundaries can be whatever feels right for you, and we'll get more into that like a little bit later. But so second, we have emotional awareness and maturity, right? So, I'm a spiritually based mental health advocate. Like I talk about, mental health all the time. that being said, like, you know, people are not always emotionally aware. And I think that, and I got in this phase too, like I definitely had this phase, but like there could be a thing kind of where, you know, as a society or like people kind of into their like egos, and I think that everyone's responsible for their healing and everyone's responsible for their triggers, and like that's not actually true. And like sometimes, you know, Mercury could be in retrograde, or the stars and the moon could be in the wrong place, and you know, people are feeling things, right? And like that's normal. Like I experience anger, I experience frustration, you know, I get triggered, my ego comes out, but like I've learned how to emotionally regulate. Again, I'm not perfect, the goal is not to be perfect, but like I can understand when I'm having feelings about people or certain things. I'm like, okay, like is this coming from a place of like, you know, this person's legitimately doing something that doesn't feel right for me or to me? Or is this like you know, maybe I'm feeling like I need to express something else, or maybe my ego is coming in here, or maybe I didn't actually articulate that this was a boundary. And so it's up to me to explain this, because people are not mind readers, right? And sometimes, you know, I have to even divine on things. I'll be real, like sometimes I'll have certain issues with people, and so I'll go to my spirit guides, I'll do divination, and I'm like, hey, like what's up? Can you show me something I'm not seeing in this relationship? Because we're not always right? Like our feelings are not always right. It's just information. And so I'm saying that's the way that I am, and I expect that the people around me will be the same way. Like I don't have like perfect friends, I'm not perfect myself, but the people around me, I need to make sure that they are aware of their own emotions, because there's nothing worse than like someone is going through something, like, you know, the people who like, they are literally always the victim. Like when I mess up, like I'll say when I mess up. My friends, when they mess up, they say when they mess up. But if you are literally always the one who is wronged, like I don't trust people like that. I don't trust people who are never wrong, because then they have no room for growth and accountability. And like because of that, then like it could be so much harder to just like have differences with these people. And you know, maybe that's just me, but like yeah, so when people are always, you know, always right, the other people are always wrong, you know, everything is just like, you did this and so I feel this way. Like people who think that the world is responsible for them and their feelings, that's a red flag. Oh my bad, we're on green flags. But yeah, but when people are able to identify, like, this is how I'm feeling, this is why the way that I feel the way that I do, and who are able to like process and regulate their emotions on their own, that is a green flag. Okay, then the next green flag that we have is alignment, right? So we're not always perfect. And so I'll go right to the book recommendations. So one of the book recommendations that I have is called Relational Intelligence by Dr. Darius Daniels. The other one I'll give later, but this is by Dr. Darius Daniels, and it's so good. He does use scripture to convey his message in this, and like I know that not everybody that watches me is Christian, probably not even like most, I'm not even, and I hope that we don't get kind of caught up in the whole scripture aspect, because really what he does is he uses evidence to back his information, and that's what all good researchers do. And so just take those stories and the information provided as evidence, and you know, that's all I have to say on that. It's a really good book. Like actually reading that book, Relational Intelligence, transformed the way that I see friendships and relationships, and it was actually like super affirming for me, because there are things that I was blaming myself for that I'm like, oh snap, like it was unhealthy the way I was doing things before, the way that I was taught that things had to be done. Okay, and so but yeah, so something that Dr. Darius Daniels says is that we can't be our best selves by ourselves, right? And so when you think about like alignment, so I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, and there's a sign on the bathroom door, and it was just like, you know, pregnant women do not drink alone, right? And so it's like but it just kind of goes back to like even the Bible verse, like the company of a fool suffers harm. Like who you hang, birds of a feather flock together. The people that you are around, they could be like life affirming for you or death affirming for you. Like, do you have the kind of friends that like if you're in a relationship and you're having problems with your significant other and then you go out one night, like are they the type of friends who will encourage you to flirt with someone else and to cheat because that person that you're dating, you know, is a whatever anyway? Because there are friends who are like that. Like they'll think, you know, or other people who are like, you know, our values and our principles like matter no matter what. You know, I even have a friend, right? So like, as loving and as kind as I could be or whatever, like, believe it or not, like, your girl has had a temper like a long time in my life, you know. Two of my Orisha are kind of known for having a little like heated energy. I come from a lot of warrior energy, you know. And so I could be getting mad, but as I've gotten more on my healing journey, like, I've learned how to kind of like limit and not give in to that anger. Right. And so like, there's something recently where I'm friends with someone, like someone did something, and like I had the ability to kind of like, yeah, like I could just make something like inconvenient, like for someone that did something like legitimately bad. Like, this person did something very bad for me, and I had the ability to do something that wouldn't hurt them, but would definitely annoy them and inconvenience them. And I was talking to my friend about it, and like, I wasn't actually planning on doing it, and I was like, yeah, and I could do this thing. And it's actually my friend JT, shout out to JT, he does the audio engineering for the show. And he looked at me, he's like, you're better than that. That's not like you. And it's like, that's what we need, you know? I started watching Big Brother the other day. Y'all, like, reality TV is my guilty pleasure. It grounds me. I think the sociologist in me just loves to study these people. But it's just like, you know, there's this one girl who came in and she was like super angry, and she's like, no, I need to come here and calm down. And then her friend's like, no, you need to go up there and tell them. And it's like, bad company. It's like, if you like, you need to be around people who are like, yeah, you know, we don't need to give into our anger, we don't need to give into our vices. Like, we could choose the better path, the brighter path, a path that leads to peace, and not just a path that leads to like temporary satisfaction of our egos. And so alignment's really important. We need to be around people who match our energy, or people who match the energy of the thing that we're trying to aspire to be. Like, if you're a creative person, being around creative people, like I talk about this all the time, like when I read more, my writing is so much better. And it's the same thing with friendships. When we're around people who, you know, have characteristics of positivity and, you know, growth and just joy and ease, like, it's so much easier to embody those characteristics within ourselves. And the last point that I have is respect. And respect seems like obvious, like, oh, I want my friends to respect me, but that's not always true. Like, you know, sometimes people think it's like cute or funny to like clown on each other, and like, there's a difference between like gentle roasting. Like, best believe I love, you know, roasting my friends, and my friends roast me, but it's like absolutely coming from a place of love. But like, there's a difference between like, you know, gentle roasting. It's also kind of how I flirt low-key, right? But there's a difference between like that and like, you know, being actually mean and like making fun of someone that you're supposed to be your friend and your ambitions. So like, so a green flag is like, this person is respectful, this person is, and not just to you, but to others, because really, like, nothing happens in a vacuum. So if someone is like, you know, really kind and like nice to you, but then they're like not kind to the person who's serving them food, or they're like not kind to or they don't like, you know, acknowledge the elder, or, you know what I mean? Like, people who are just like very, yeah, people who are respectful to others, because that's how eventually they're going to treat you. Like, you know, I'm sure you might have heard this saying before, where it's like, you know, men who are only nice to women that they're attracted to. Like, that's a very real thing. I've seen it, I've experienced it. And like, you know, at some point, like, you're gonna be unattractive to that man, right? Or whatever reason, you know, life changes, people get upset. And so it's like, how do we treat the people that we don't want anything from, that we don't, you know what I mean? Like, that's how they'll treat you. And so people who meet everyone with respect, they'll meet you with respect as well, right? And so I feel like I kind of like trickled a lot of the red flags into the green flags, but we're just gonna rock with it, okay? And so in terms of like the actual red flags so the green flags are non-negotiable, right? So, you know, someone who has boundaries, someone who is emotionally aware and intelligent, someone who is aligned with the person that you are, the person that you're becoming, and someone who is respectful and moves with integrity, someone who is honest, someone who is loyal, someone who's truthful. Those are non-negotiables, because just someone having like not having any of these things could cause chaos in your life. Like, someone who violates your boundaries, like, that could be disruptive for your peace. You know, someone who's not emotionally aware, like that's led to my most chaotic relationships, you know? The red flags, like, these are things where it's like, you don't want no smoke, right? So in terms of red flags, we have everyone always leaves. This one used to always get me, because I I talk about this all the time, don't be annoying, but I'm a Pisces. Like, we love a project, we love, we love everybody, we're super caring or whatever. And so like my toxic trait used to be that I always used to think I could fix people, and that was arrogant and ego based on my part, right? So like I found that like oftentimes people would be like, yeah, everyone always leaves me, and I would be like, but like I would see the heart in them. Like, I really see right to the God in people, and I'd be like, but you have so many lovable and worthy and redeemable qualities. And so I would try to like go out of my way to accommodate people that I eventually would have to end up leaving. If someone is always leaving, if there's a person and they're saying everyone always leaves me, they are the common denominator, the person who's always being left. Sometimes people don't do the healing or the shadow work. We all have positive qualities and negative qualities, and sometimes they're more destructive than others, And so yeah, if someone says people always leave me, believe that, and when you see a reason to leave, trust that. It's that simple. If people are always leaving them, that means they have healing to do. And for better or for worse, right? Like, I know a lot of people who are codependent and could have low self-esteem. Been there. Hey, we could get in a lot of relationships with, abusive and manipulative people. And I did an episode like way back, like way back, called People Pleasing, Accountability, and I feel like something else. But like, I had to acknowledge that that was my fault. If I'm always being put in a position where people around me and really close to me are taking advantage of me and abusing me, I had to realize that I'm putting something out there, that I'm accepting certain things and creating certain signals within myself that are allowing people to feel like they can treat me that way. And so I'm not saying that these are bad people if people are always leaving them. I'm saying that just because someone, is a kind person or might have positive qualities, that doesn't mean that we have to be harmed in order to accommodate them and the things that they got going on if they're not willing to do their own work, right? Okay. And so that's a red flag. Everyone always leaves. Another red flag is they have questionable character traits. People who gossip a lot, like, nah, we're not in high school anymore. You don't need to gossip. People who gossip, best believe when they have the opportunity, they will be talking about you. And also when you're in friendships, like, they say friends are for a reason or a season and a lifetime. That being said, not everybody is in your life for a lifetime. And so if you're around people who are always talking about other people, if that friendship ends, like a lot of friendships do, they don't go for the rest of your life, is that the kind, like, are you going to confide in someone who talks about a lot of people who will eventually be able to be in a position where they can talk about you? Like, no, we don't want to be around gossips or spiteful people who are petty and spiteful. Like, it might seem funny and all, but it's like, again, if you have an issue with that person, they have the ability to use that same exact characteristic towards you, towards petty and spitefulness. And I didn't write this down, right? But I think that this is something that's also super important, is the red flags are their friends. Red flags could be friends. Like, if you know a few people that someone hangs out with and like they seem like they're like, the kind, or they're like the non-problematic one in the group, they are. Like, you are who you hang out with. Going back to the same verse that I wish I remember the actual scripture, but a company of fools suffers harm. If someone is able to be around and accommodate and tolerate negative, toxic, gossipy, low vibrational behavior, that means that there's something deep within their spirit that's okay with it. Like, we all have like different families or friends or whatever. Certain situations need to bring out different versions of you. That's normal, right? Like, it's whatever, survival thing. But if someone is able to like be really close with and spend a substantial amount of time with low vibrational people, that's a red flag. Because going back to the whole alignment thing, those are the people that will be in their ear when you're having disagreements. And like, this sounds like romantic, but yeah, like, it could be the same thing for romantic and friendships. Like, if you get into an argument with one of your friends, like, is the other friend a drama person? Do they love drama? Are they going to keep stirring the pot? Are they going to start talking crap about you when that person has issues, instead of saying like, hey, this person actually is like super loving and they're just going something in right now? Like, are you with people who fight fire with fire and burn flames? Are you with people who like, pour the water and like cool things down? So the people that the people are friends with is really, really telling. Don't undermine it, because people put on great representatives at first, but true colors, when they show, they're very, very bright and revealing, right? Another huge red flag is competition. competition, competitiveness. I did an episode, you know, about it's okay to experience envy, and I go really hard for that. Like, I'm really coming for the deep healing and shadow work, which means acknowledging the things that are not always sexy or sound good. It is normal to experience envy, right? But it's not normal to be an envious person in your friendships. And I wrote this down and I kept tapping my pen after I wrote this, so I want to emphasize that. Competition. You can never be safe in a relationship when the other person's sense of esteem is dependent on them being better than you. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna say that again. You can never be safe in a relationship when the other person's sense of esteem is dependent on them being better than you. That part. There are people who compete with you and you don't even know it, but there are signs, right? So, you know, Aoife kept telling me I had all these enemies, and I'm like, Aoife, where? I don't leave the house, I don't talk to a lot of people. Enemies, negative energy, it could be like evil eye, it could be someone is jealous of you, it could be like whatever, right? So I had a friend and I showed her this yoga video. We were watching it together. I'm thinking it's just like this little cute thing that we could do together as friends. And she was like, so we did the yoga video. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so fun, right? And then she was like, oh yeah, like I really liked it and I saw what you were doing, so it made me want to go harder. And like at the time I was just like, oh, whatever. Like I didn't see that as a red flag. I'm just like, okay, like, you know, whatever. But she was comparing herself to me, and that happened frequently throughout the relationship. There was another time where we went out and, you know, we met, and this will actually come to a further point, right? But we went out and we met these people and we were talking about like going kayaking. I brought up like, oh yeah, we could go kayaking together. And the person was like, oh wow, like you go kayaking? And she's like, yeah, I took her to this spot, like I brought her kayaking. And I was like, I've actually been like kayaking since middle school. Like, you know, live in the woods. Like most of the things that I do is outside. But like she felt the need to talk about how she put me on. And then like, and it's just, and there are a few other instances like that. And at the time, I'm just thinking, whatever. Like, I didn't need to like feel the need to clarify, like, no, you did not start this thing in my life. But what that was for her was competitiveness, right? Like, she felt like anything that like she showed me, like she took ownership over any positive qualities that like I might have had or whatever. And like anytime that I was doing well at something, she saw that as something that she needed to do really well at as well. With that friend, right, that brings me to the last point of questionable character traits is love bombing, right? People come off as super loving and caring or whatever at the beginning, and that's why it's super important that we take it slow. And so, you know, and you know, you could agree to disagree with me on this, right? But I believe, like, based on my own personal experiences, that it takes a year to really get to know someone. And I know that there are people who meet and get married in 3 months and things work out for them. And like, again, there are things called like outliers, and also like statistics and stuff, like there are highs, lows, and mediums. And this is not empirical data. This is just based on my life, right? Like, I'm giving you what I've seen. A year is usually how long it takes, at least for me, to know who people are, right? Whether that be like friendships, whether even therapists, family, or whatever. Within a year, usually you're able to, I've seen how people have handled stress, I've seen how they handled adversity, and I've seen how they handled me around others, right? So the example that I just gave about the friend that I had, when we were just the two of us, it was fine. You know, I was able to talk about ideas and stuff, but when we were in public, it was like she was always trying to one-up me. And that was something that it took me time to realize, because like everything that happens, things aren't good or bad. Everything is evidence. But I had evidence that every time we were out together, she was always trying to one-up me. And that was part of like, you know, how our friendship ended up ending. And so like, you know, be really mindful of like love bombing, because this person came off as like super kind and loving or whatever from the beginning, but like I had to wait for time to be passed before I could actually see, you know, who this person truly was. And so, you know, there's a definition of, so there's this mental health diagnosis, and I'm gonna talk about this really quickly because, so I actually heard about this from I believe her name is Sheena on Black Girls Heal. I saw one of her Instagram lives and she talked about it for like, a few minutes. I stayed on and it actually really set me free. She's talking about borderline personality disorder. Now, before I get into this, right, again, my purpose is never to ever shame anyone with any type of mental health diagnosis. Like, I myself have been given different mental health diagnoses over time. I have also kind of rejected them because I was given spiritual ones that make much more sense for me and my experiences. And if that's something that y'all are interested, I'll definitely talk more about that as well. But that being said, I think that all goes down to semantics, right? Like, and regardless of what happens, like, there are different symptoms and things that are happening. Does any diagnosis make someone a bad person or unworthy of love or anything? Absolutely not. Like, we are all worthy of love and deserving of love. But I do think that's also important that we be mindful of the way that people act and the way that people can sometimes show up, so that way we can protect ourselves and create the proper boundaries, so that way we're not harmed by other people's, habits and dysfunction. And if you have this, diagnosis, like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, there are people who, have this diagnosis that live very fulfilling and love-filled lives, especially, after getting help from like therapist, or I'll plug spiritualist because that's who I am. It's amazing how like even food can change mental health. Like, there are people who have been completely like off psychiatric medications for like decades, just simply from eating herbal-based diets and stuff. So this is no shade, this is no hate. Like, I just want us to be really mindful of these things, right? And so Sheena's talking about borderline personality disorder, which I never heard of before. And so I took the definition from the Mayo Clinic, but I took out every U and I changed it to one, because, words are powerful things, right? So with borderline personality disorder, one may have an intense fear of abandonment or instability, and one may have difficulty tolerating being alone. Yet inappropriate anger, impulsiveness, and frequent mood swings may push others away, even though one may want to have long-lasting relationships, right? And so when we talk about like taking it slow, and why I say it takes a year to get to know people, like, I found, and it's wild because like I had two different therapists. Like, mind you, I really be giving people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm a very, like, as emotional as I am, I can also be intellectual, and like I definitely am the type to put people that I love on a pedestal, including my family and friends, which is why I had such, codependent habits for so long. But anyway, like, I had two different therapists when I wasn't even saying, like, in my opinion, what were like negative things about people, just my experiences with them. One was just like, oh, that person is exhibiting lots of narcissistic behaviors. And the other one, like, who I got to talk to longer, she's like, why do you think that you attract narcissistic people? And I'm both, and like, these are never things, like, I never said the word narcissist. And so like, whatever, right? So like, people who are like healers, so I had to realize that like a lot of people in my life, they started out amazing. Like, that friend, like, the people who've hurt me the most, like, I mean, again, I'm not in a romantic relationship. Like, I haven't yet found my one. They say that when you meet the one that you know, but I'm saying like, these are people that things started off and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is my person, and not for nothing, like, there are some soulmates that we have who chose, before we came to this earth, they chose to hurt you so that way you could grow and develop some sort of character development. Like, there are people, we have soulmates even through our hurt, because like, the person that I am today she would not exist without a lot of people who broke my heart and different challenges that I went through that I had to become triumphant through, right? So that being said, like, yeah, so just people, especially like healers, like people who have natural loving and healing energy, like, don't be surprised if the people that you are attracted to, they might come off really loving, but then like kind of go left. And so it's so important to just not bring people close to you right away. And actually, someone that I used to talk to, he gave me this like really great example, because I was getting burned that way, because I'm like, yo, I'm giving my heart to people and they're just betraying me or doing all this like shiesty stuff. And he's like, that's your fault for bringing them too close. And so he gave me the analogy of a bullseye, right? And he was talking about how, like, I was just bringing people right to my center, But there are layers to a bullseye, and you need to just let people be on the outside and then gradually let them get closer with time, and not just bring everyone to the center, but only like leave that spot for a few. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so true. And so and that like really changed things for me, because I can be a very visual person as well. And so like with my relationships now, like I'm able to envision kind of like where the people are in my life in the bullseye. And that wasn't going to be a journaling prompt, but we can do that like a little bonus creativity prompt. Like create your bullseye, and who are the people in your life and how close are they to your center. And in the book Relational Intelligence, this is not a paid promotion, this is just so helpful, but in this book Relational Intelligence, he talks about not everybody gets love, but not everybody gets access. And even Jesus, loving person, perfect person, right? He had the 12 disciples, right? That was like his squad, but there was the 3 that came with him in the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Not all the people who were his friends or like close to him got to have the same amount of access. There were the 3, then there were 12, and then there was like the 70, the rest of the people who traveled with him. And so we have to be really mindful of that. And so the creativity prompt is to create the bullseye, okay? And so I'm gonna hurry up because I feel like we're getting like into it in time, right? So yeah, the first be mindful was to, take it slow. Don't just bring people to the center. Another thing to be mindful of is just because someone is wrong for you doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. That's fine, right? Like not everybody's for you. And I'm gonna say again, just because someone is wrong for you doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. And when we have that mindset where like people are always causing problems for us and in our lives, that's how people can get into, reoccurring habits of thinking like men ain't ish or whatever, when it's like, no, you're just not for me. Or maybe I'm coming at this the wrong way because I have healing to do. Like, I'm really big on mental health and love and everything, but like that's something that Spirit wants me to talk more and more about and like examine in myself is like the accountability. Like the world is not responsible for our problems, and the world is not responsible for our healing. We are. But then to the next point, right? Just because someone is wrong for you doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And I'm gonna say that again with a little bit more tenderness in my voice. Just because someone is wrong for you doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are divinely designed. You are worthy just how you are, okay? And you are you're perfect. There's someone who loves you just as you are. And it should absolutely be yourself. And it should absolutely, and it's, it's the creator, and I'm getting caught up in the words, but like you're worthy of love just as you are, okay? So, don't sweat that. Who you are right now is perfect. Do not even sweat that. But that being said, like, not everyone's for you, and you don't want to be with someone who's settling for you, because like, in friendships and relationships, like, even in careers, like we all go through high periods and low periods. We have the recessions, and we have the businesses are booming. We have the, honeymoon love phases, and then we have the like, we've been in this for a long time and sometimes you're stressing me out. And like, we deserve to be with someone who like really loves us and accepts us and thinks that we are great just as we are, because that's what allows that's what makes us want to fight for it, right? And in all types of relationships. And so then we are not all built the same, right? That's another thing I want us to be mindful of, is we're not all built the same. We all have different love languages and ways that we feel safe giving and receiving love, romantically, familially, and platonically. And it's up to you to understand first and foremost how you approach love so you can articulate that love to others, right? And sometimes, in terms of like how right from the beginning, when we're talking about boundaries and green flags, sometimes you're not compatible with someone. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is my boundary, and someone's like, that's my deal breaker. It's like, bet, see you, we're not compatible, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with them, there's nothing wrong with me, right? And so I talked about how I was going to compare this to astrology, right? So like we are literally all built differently, right? Like we are all divinely designed, like down to our fingerprints. Like we are so unique, right? And so when you think about like astrology, right? So there's Venus, and Venus, for those of you who are like not familiar, to put it like super simple, Venus is a planet of love and beauty. So Venus affects like the type of things that you value in relationships, the kind of person that you'd want to date, the kind of person that you show up as in relationships, right? And so like for me, example, my Venus is in Aquarius. I actually have an Aquarius stellium, and stellium, that means that it's like what most of my chart is. So I'm a Pisces, but most of my chart is Aquarius, right? And so in terms of like love languages, how I give love is, at least in non-romantic relationships, my top love language is, words of affirmation. I'm a very encouraging person. I'm a really understanding person. I speak life into people. Like I'm really big on, I like to use my words to make people feel good about themselves and empowered. Like that's just like an easy, natural, and organic way that like I was built and designed to give love to people, right? And so with my Venus being in Aquarius, so because I'm so big on words of affirmation and love, and I can be really encouraging and inspiring, a lot of the time people will come to me when they have things going on in their lives and they'd want to like kind of literally trauma dump on me. Like I wouldn't even ask about this, be first thing in the morning and they're talking to me about their issues. Like, and I talk about this like former friend a lot, but like someone who I literally like, I would spend 2 hours on the phone with them. And I can't even imagine, I can't believe that that's still like, that was a version of myself that was able to do that. But I would spend hours on the phone while someone was just pouring all of their crap onto me. And I realized, and like, that's just not the type of person that I am. Like if you know anything about Aquarian people, they get the rep of being detached. No offense, but y'all are. I love you. Again, my Venus is in Aquarius. I can't help but be attracted to y'all, and I hate it. But I don't hate it, but you know what I mean? So like, but anyway, like Aquarian people, they're detached. Like they don't like to be like super like on you. Like they're ruled by the planet that's the farthest away. Like they're the rebels. They like to be on their own. And so like, that's how I love though, right? So it's like, if someone is constantly like coming at me for things, I'm just like, ugh, like, and there's nothing wrong with me. Like that's just the way that I'm built. Like sometimes if I talk to someone and they text me again the next day, I'm like, I just talked to you yesterday. Like some of my most fulfilling friendships and relationships, the most authentic ones to me, we'll talk every couple months, every couple of months on the phone, maybe for an hour or two. We'll talk, we'll laugh or whatever, and then we won't talk again because we're grown and we're busy or whatever. Like I don't feel the need to constantly like have to talk to the people who are around me. And so and the people who I'm friends with, they love it because like, they have children, they're in like medical programs, like they have their own business, like we got stuff to do, right? But like I have people in my life who would be upset about that. They're like, oh, I can't always talk to you. And I'm like, that's right, you can't always talk to me. And that's not wrong with me. And if you want someone who can always talk to you, bet, like that's fine, but that's not me. And so like there are people who fumbled the relationship with me because they were wanting something from me that I wasn't willing or able to give. And so you have to be mindful when you're going into friendships, like what kind of friend are you and what kind of friend that you need, and also being mindful of like, is this coming from a healthy place? So the journal prompts that I have, right? So the first one is, what type of friend are you? So again, the first journal prompt we have is, what type of friend are you? And I think that's really helpful. And so I actually want to share with like, y'all, because I actually am down to become friends with people that I meet off of here. But like I said, don't think you're going to talk to me every day, because that sounds like hell to me. No offense. I'm sure you're lovely. So I'm the kind of friend that you have fun with, that you share your dreams with, that you can go dancing with, that you can make art with, cook, or just hang out on the couch and make memories and watch movies. I'm not interested in trauma bonding, right? That's the kind of friend that I have. So there are people who are big mad because I wasn't trying to be there every time they had an emotional crisis, which could be every day, right? Like they're big mad because I wasn't trying to be there for all their emotional crises, when it's like, I'm the kind of friend who's like, yo, let's go for a walk and do cartwheels in the grass. Like I'm literally that friend. And so they missed out, and that's their loss. And not to say that I feel like I have to touch on this, even though it's gonna be very brief because of time, but just because we have our own boundaries and ways that we prefer to give and receive love, that doesn't mean those things have to be completely rigid, right? Part of love and relationships and friendships of all forms is having compromise. And so there are certain people who I will compromise for. So, you know, I have not a lot of people, but like my people who are closest to me, like I will talk to them about their emotional things and the things that they have going on, and I actually enjoy it, and it gives me life as well. And so like, you know, we have to be picky, right? Like in the age of like Facebook and, you know, people having like 4,000 friends or like 20,000 Instagram followers, like you make it seem like everything's supposed to be like quality or quantity based, but it's like, no, like no, you don't have to treat everybody the same way. You shouldn't treat everybody the same way, and that's fine. And there's some people that you're gonna have to bend for more than others, and that's just, that comes down to discernment, right? And so, like, what type of friend are you? And then also, what type of friends are you manifesting? What's the second journal prompt? What type of friends are you manifesting? Okay, and so something I wanted to make sure that I noted was that, like, in terms of manifesting friendship, we shouldn't want to only be friends with people who are like us, because that kind of limits our ability to grow. Like some of the most powerful transformations that I've had have come from being friends with people who didn't think like me, who didn't look like me, who didn't have my same ethnicity or life experiences, right? And so like I'm a very introverted person, but I'm blessed by having extroverted friends, because they're the ones who are like, let's go dancing, you know? I'm a very dreamy person, an ambitious person. Like I can envision, you know, huge mastermind things and just spend the day in my daydream, but like it really helps me to have, you know, earth and goal, or like more practical people in my life who are like, all right, dreamer, like, you know, back on earth, like we have to do these like little practical steps first. And so like sometimes in terms of like manifesting people, it's really important that we're talking about people who are strong where we are lacking, and not from a place of like exploitation, you know, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna use you for this thing, but understanding that like, you know, sometimes the really practical and like structured people, sometimes they could have trouble, you know, engaging in the dream space, right? So like that's where I come in, and we knowing that like who we are, our strengths and our weaknesses and whatever, like they're perfect for who we're supposed to be. That's why we were made that way. And it's the same thing for the people around us, and that we need to find people who complement us and people who are a great balance for us, because it's not, you know, you won't always give what you get from other people, but if you're really mindful about the people that you're around, then you'll always get what you need. Okay, so that's all I have for y'all today. Thank you for staying for this super long episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to send me a little love donation for this energy exchange, you could be blessed via Cashapp and buy me a coffee at boundlessdivine. Yeah, thank you to JoJo. She's been editing our videos lately. They look super sexy, don't they? Come on, got my skin looking amazing. Again, JT, the audio engineer. Thank you to all of you for your love donations. Thank you for your support and your friendship. Yeah, all right, so I forgot to say the second book recommendation is The Four Agreements. This book, it just keeps coming to me this year. The Four Agreements, it's so important. I already read it and I'm rereading it. It's so important. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it talks about, and it's great. It's Toltec wisdom, and it's super helpful in terms of like making relationships, because it reminds us to, you know, be really honest and truthful, to not make assumptions, and always do our best. And like, it's so good. So make sure you check it out. Okay. All right. Remember, you are good, and you are worthy, and you are loved. Never forget who you are, because this world needs your light. Be kind with yourself, because practice makes progress, and all things come in divine time. And as you leave this space, may you go in peace and love and pleasure, purpose, and prosperity. In the name of love, Ashe.